Hi, and welcome to AMA Puget Sound's Coffee Talk series, live on Thursdays at 11 a.m. Today, our guest is Rand Fishkin, who I don't think I really need to introduce you. If you don't know who Rand is, you're not in marketing. I don't know. So we have all of his links down below. Look him up. So let's get into why you're here. So,
Ooh, fun.
yeah. So a few weeks ago, like usual, Rand, you had a wonderful tweet about Google and Facebook, and you had two presentations canceled. And so I thought, hey, we have a platform. Let's hear. What do you got to say? We've got so many people in our audience that are like, Google and Facebook. I want to know more, because how many of us are kind of not happy with those two services? So yeah, let's dish. So first of all, what was in your presentations that you were talking about Google and Facebook?
Sure. Yeah. So in the tweet thread, Julie, basically what I did is kind of share this email that I had received from an organizer for an event. And as I mentioned to you just before we started the show, the event was coming right up. It was not very far away. Mm-hmm. And so, I got an email from them, and they said, hey, we looked over your presentation, and these sort of slides at the beginning that set the stage for why you are urging marketers to diversify their marketing sources and be wary of Google and Facebook as good partners. Mm-hmm. We want these removed, right? We don't think these are appropriate for our event. Mm-hmm. And I had kind of two issues with that. One is, just logistically speaking, they'd had that presentation, sit in a Google Drive shared with them for a month and a half, 2 months. Yeah. So clearly they had only looked at it, just before and made this decision. And second, that is not something I'm comfortable doing, right? I want to present my position and opinions unfiltered. And, if you want to have me at your event, great. And if you don't, no problem, right? It's not, I don't view this as censorship at all. Mm-hmm. Right? Censorship would be if they somehow stopped publication of it or were able to, interfere. This is just curation. They get to exercise their freedom of speech to have what and who they choose at their event. Wonderful, mm-hmm. Fine. I don't mind at all. And of course, when I shared it on Twitter, I shared the, I do have the link for folks, I assume, but
I am going to be.
Yeah, maybe about a dozen slides or so, right? So I just took screenshots of the slides and posted them on Twitter in a thread so that folks could essentially see, like, here's the context of what they want removed. They didn't want every single one I tweeted removed, but a bunch of them. And the presentation essentially makes three big picture points. The first one is that if you are considering Google and Facebook, most marketing dollars, most advertising dollars especially, flow to those two companies. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, they are not good partners for you. They don't have your best interests at heart because of their monopoly, duopoly position. Their incentives and power structure mean that they don't have to treat you well or their sort of audience well, right? Facebook and Google can both and have both been very abusive to the broader ecosystem, on issues like privacy and security, on issues like fairness, on issues like anti-competitiveness, on government influence, all these sorts of things. And so I'm making this point in these slides, right, of what's going on, and also making the point that it is, in my opinion, extremely frustrating that the work we do as marketers to create content for the web, to educate, to share, information with people is often essentially taken by Google and Facebook and used as free labor and free, sort of copyright and trademark free information that they can present directly to their users, unlike any other company in the world who would have to get permission or would have to pay a licensing fee of some kind. And then they show it directly to their users, and you lose out on the opportunity to get a visitor to your website, get a potential subscriber to your email list, all these kinds of things. So that was point number one of three. This is the one they seem to really object to. Mm-hmm. They didn't like that at all.
Yeah.
My second point in the presentation is that Google and Facebook alone can't build a competitive advantage, and that's just because almost everyone is on there, almost everyone is competing there. All your competitors are going to be in those results. So standing out from the crowd, much more difficult. And then the third point is simply that even if you decide we're going to throw a ton of money at Google and Facebook, that's where we're going to do a bunch of our marketing. Even if you do that, if you invest in channels outside of that duopoly, those two platforms will perform better for you.
Yeah.
Right. If I do a webinar with, with some event, chances are good that people who attend that event will be more likely to click on SparkToro's ads and more likely to, if they see SparkToro in the search results, click on it and, browse the site, more likely to reference it and link to it. So, doing off the duopoly marketing benefits even your duopoly marketing efforts. And so anyway, these are the 3 points. This is most of what the presentation is about. Obviously, there's a lot of tactical stuff in there and tools and ways of doing that. But this first section seem to be very controversial to them. And granted, I don't pull a lot of punches, right? I would say I am both critical and harsh with with both of those companies. I just don't think that's all that unusual or surprising.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it feels like it's like we all know it.
Yeah. I don't feel like there's a ton of marketers out there who are like, oh, Google is taking my content and showing it to people without paying me money for my copyright and trademark.
Right. We're like,
let's clutch at them.
Right. Exactly. Like we all know. I mean, it's going back to the whole thing of don't sign up for that email because they're going to sell your information. Like we all, that doesn't always happen, but it's just like some of those myths. It's like, yeah, there's truth to it and we all know, so we don't do it.
And it might, I think that the folks who find ways to expand their marketing outside of Facebook and Google tend to benefit in all sorts of serendipitous and obvious ways. And also, hey, I think in a hyper-capitalist society, one of the ways that you express your frustrations and your points of view is with your dollars and your investments, right? And so, hey, I don't love, from a sort of macroeconomic perspective and from a political perspective, a lot of the things that Google and Facebook are doing to consumers and society as a whole. I think they prevent a lot of innovation. I don't know if anybody watched the Google I/O conference this week, but I sort of had the sense that a lot of folks who covered it did, which was, boy, Google has stopped doing a lot of innovative things and they're doing a lot of extractive and rent-seeking things.
Yes, a lot of procuring, a lot of things like that, rather than, and that seems to be just what you do when you get to a certain point of how big your company is. You just start buying. You just accumulate. You don't innovate because all of these other little companies did the innovating for you. You just get to buy them. And that's what I'm seeing. And it's really a shame.
One of my big concerns with Google, I've mentioned this too. I had a call with some folks from the Wall Street Journal a couple weeks, not the editorial side. I hate those SOBs. I'm not going to talk to them. But on the journalist side, the news business side, I actually think they have quite a good quality team there. And someone from the Washington Post earlier. But when we were having a conversation, they asked me like, hey, do you feel like there's a lot of stories that have gone unreported in the sort of Google antitrust, anti-competitive sector? And I said, yes, I feel like it has very much slipped through the attention of the business press that Google, when Google makes these investments in sector after sector, early on, right, they roll out Google Weather, and this obviously takes a lot of opportunity away from many of the weather providers, but who still did okay, right? It's not completely extractive, and that weather widget hasn't changed in 15 years, so it's still pretty simplistic. If you want to know rainfall, numbers. It's not in there. You have to click on Wonderground or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. But a good example would be something like Google Maps, or
I was just
YouTube,
thinking. Mm-hmm.
or Google Flights, or Google Hotels, or Google Jobs, or Google News to a certain extent. And in all of these spaces, and 100 more, I don't know if you search for like color picker or speed test or this kind of thing, right? But essentially what Google does is they kind of build their own widget. In flights, that's a very substantial infrastructure. They bought ITA for $700-800 million, right? Whatever it was. But in color picker, right, they just build their own little color picker, and then everybody in the graphic design world who's built very expansive ones, they all lose out.
Yeah.
And
exactly. It's Walmart.
It's
Walmart all over again.
Yeah, it's frustrating, right? It's that sense that not only did you remove opportunity from this person, but, for example, I have a friend here in Seattle, entrepreneur, and she was starting up a business that essentially connects parents with child care providers. So if you've got kids, right, you can go to this website and plug in, okay, I have this many kids of these ages, this is sort of their schedule. I'm looking for after school care or emergency care because whatever, I need to be out of town, or I have to take care of a sick parent, or any of these kinds of things, summer school, camp, interest, whatever it is. So you need childcare of some kind, and they connect you with, okay, here's, we'll plug into all the wait lists, and we've got the full database and everything. And of course, when she pitches investors, the response is very, very consistent. This sounds great, sounds exciting, but Google's just going to take this business from you if it takes off, right? Yep. They'll just build their own, replicate it, and they'll win as soon as, if you prove out that this thing works, Google will just steal it from you. What are you going to do to stop that? And I think to myself, man, how many thousands, hundreds of thousands of businesses were stopped from even getting started because entrepreneurs and investors said, Google's just going to steal this market.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So I feel like that has not been well covered. I feel like that discussion is a really important one. And I don't think Google intentionally tries to remove that innovation, but their actions and efforts over the years have stopped probably a lot of phenomenal businesses and organizations from existing. That breaks my heart.
It does.
I think that's what that's the reason we have antitrust laws.
Yeah,
and I would like to see them enforced.
Absolutely. And what would you? So, quick on the flip side, how many companies are there? You're saying that are being kind of pushed out because of Google. How many are planning on that they hope Google will buy their company?
Oh, I mean, 5-10 years ago, a ton. But as Google's M&A activity has become less focused on sort of the specific, individual tier. So one of the things that's very frustrating is antitrust activity has not cracked down on Google for this behavior, but the oversight has meant that Google is very hesitant to buy individual businesses, and they instead just build and copy, which in a way is
worse.
Yeah, it's
worse.
As bad, worse. I don't know, right? The end result is similar, which is essentially that the opportunity for innovation is diminished. And yes, there are people who build their businesses hoping that Google will buy them, although much less today than 7, 8, 9 years ago. I think it's been diminishing for a long time now.
Okay.
That's not because Google's buying fewer businesses. They're just not buying businesses of this kind, right? They basically recognize that they don't have to. They can build their own. And yeah, so you just get weird stuff, right? Google really likes infrastructures. They buy things like Fitbit, right? So that they can get all the, whatever health data. They buy things like, what was it? Well, ITA, right, in the flight, so they can get all the flight information behind the scenes, right? They are making, I think that the last truly innovative thing that they did that I loved was Project Fi.
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Which is a phenomenal service and has created real competition in a nasty space, right? The mobile data providers, right?
Mhm.
Project Fi is very innovative. It is very affordable. It offers lots of really cool stuff. During the pandemic, my phone plan has cost me $35 a month for unlimited data and unlimited.
Really?
Yeah, because if you're on Wi-Fi, it costs you
Mhm.
nothing, right?
Right.
Google only charges you when you are actually using the data, and then there's a cap, and the cap is still cheaper than T-Mobile, and it's a great thing.
Mhm.
You fly overseas, you land in whatever Bolivia, you land in South Africa, you land in Germany, and your phone just works, and it's the same rate as here in the U.S., and there's no extra cost. Beautiful, wonderful, right? This is creating real innovation and challenge. But
Mhm.
then you look at Google doing something like fiber, and they just shut it
Yeah.
down because, well, it's tough and expensive. We don't want to keep fighting it.
Mhm. Mhm.
That kind of breaks my heart. I really would love to see Google use if they're going to have all this market power, let's fight against the Comcasts and the
Yeah.
what's the other big one that
Time Warner is another big one.
Cox? Yeah, right.
So, because you keep talking about it, and I know we want to talk about it, but antitrust and accountability, what? Because this is a two-sided question. There's what you would love to see, and then there's reality. What could actually happen? So let's go broad and say, what would you like to see happen, first of all, in a just world?
So let me first say that I am not an antitrust attorney, and I don't have a legal background. I've studied this space mildly, but
As a consumer.
I'm hesitant.
Yeah.
I'm hesitant to give. My suspicion is that one of the things that could be truly extraordinary for the internet ecosystem is if Google were three different companies. Google Maps, which I think is a wonderful local search engine on its own, and certainly can compete with people like TripAdvisor and Yelp and all of that, and probably earn a ton of advertising revenue, and then do lots of innovative things in its space because it has to deal with the competition of that space and isn't just propped up by Google's search monopoly. I think YouTube should be its own company. I think it feels very clear to me that when Google acquired YouTube, regulators did not look at that acquisition as relevantly and as thoughtfully as they could have. I think they should have stopped that transaction from happening. Same should have been true, in my opinion, with Facebook and Instagram. But
I agree.
that regulatory approval meant that basically not only did Google prop up YouTube to make it, sort of even when bandwidth was expensive, right? It used its dollars from Google search to be able to make YouTube the only real platform that could host the quantities of data with the bandwidth that were needed in the early days of internet video at that capacity. And then Google in 2014, basically overnight, one day in the summer, it went from any video could rank in Google's search results to only YouTube appears here.
Yeah.
I think it was something like 55-60% of Google's video results came from YouTube, and then it was 98% the next day.
Yeah. And they're like the number 2 search engine now?
Yeah, they're the number 2
wonder
search
why.
engine. Well, and that to my mind, right, that is just clear and blatant use of monopoly power in one field to unfairly compete in another. That's why the Sherman Antitrust Act was created, right? Essentially, you had whatever it was, U.S. Steel, right, saying, oh, you can only transport our steel on these railroads that we own, and the government was like, this is preventing innovation. We're not getting anywhere. We need to implement antitrust in order to create a fair and balanced field. You can't use your monopoly ownership in one field to unfairly compete in other fields. Well, what did Google do? The fact that regulators just weren't savvy enough there's a difference between sort of internet video and internet search. I don't know. So that's where I think you would start to see a much more innovative service from Google, from YouTube, and from whatever they called Maps. I'd love to see that world.
Sure. So let's, that would be great. That would be great. But in reality, where do you think we're headed?
Well, so, I am going to advocate for that, not only because I think it's a good idea, but because I believe that is possible. Right. So I don't think it is a bridge too far to, ask the Department of Justice to investigate real claims of monopoly abuse and to look very closely. I mean, look, under Donald Trump, there was talk at the federal level of potentially breaking up Facebook and Instagram. I think that discussion should continue. I think it should extend to Google as well.
I agree. I agree. I was so angry when that happened, when that acquisition. I was so angry. I still am.
Yeah. I mean, look, Bill Barr is a nightmare of a human being. I think he probably could be ranked in the top 50 Americans who have done the most evil in the last 50 years, right? But
I got a list going.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long list. It's a heartbreakingly long list. But I think that, frankly, his instincts on at least that, and maybe the people advising him, right, had real claims that these companies were, very abusive in their monopoly powers, and that a breakup should have been one of the solutions considered. And it was very frustrating to me that they sort of, rushed the case to get it out before the election. Did any voters really give a crap about? Well, yeah, they did bring a case against Google, so I was going to vote for Biden, but I guess I'll stick with Trump. I can't imagine there was one person in the United States who that was their issue.
Right. I don't think it was.
I don't think it was.
No. So let's kind of turn this a little bit. What are things that you recommend, if you are, you really don't like Google and Facebook, but you don't have a choice, what do you recommend using and doing outside of that? Obviously, in some cases, you have to find where your audience is. I worked for a nonprofit where it was all for parents and they were all on Facebook.
Yeah.
So it's, what do you recommend for that? And if those folks are on Facebook, what do you recommend? Yeah.
So the great part about people is, even though almost all of them use Google and are on Facebook, those are not the only places they interact. They listen to podcasts. They watch people's YouTube channels. They subscribe to email newsletters. They read content on other websites. They subscribe to, journalistic publications of some kind. They read industry news of some kind. They get a school newsletter. Whatever it is, right? All of those sources of influence also exist, and you can reach people through there. So, look, yes, there might be a Facebook parent group. Fine. Those human beings have lives outside of that Facebook parent group. Right. You can reach them in other places. It is, I think it's incumbent on marketers to find the sources of influence for their audience and invest in the ones that can give them a competitive advantage that maybe not every other one of their competitors are in, and that don't cost an overwhelming fortune to invest in. And that, I do a lot of events and webinars and podcasts. I do a lot of participation on LinkedIn and Twitter and in subreddits. I find a tremendous amount of value in events when those come back, certainly. And a tremendous number of small blogs and industry publications and email newsletters and co-marketing opportunities. And the list is long, right?
It is.
It is not, I feel like many marketers, unfortunately, outsource the process of doing their audience research to, I'll just throw more money at Google and Facebook, let them sort it out.
Yep, exactly. I think I know my audience enough to just click a few tags without.
Or I don't know them at all, so I'll just let Google
Right.
target them.
Exactly. That's the other one. So I do have to bring this up because we're talking about Facebook. Like, this is one of my absolute, I think this might be my biggest marketing pet peeve, is when I am looking for, say, a restaurant or a small business, and I find them and their website is a Facebook page.
It breaks my heart. I mean, I think Facebook really, through propaganda in the early, part of their history, convinced businesses, small businesses of all kinds, marketers of all kinds, that if you built your audience on Facebook, Facebook would give you access to them.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I remember that. And
yeah, of course, right? You'd go to a restaurant, and the menu would say, like us on Facebook, here's our page, whatever.
Mm-hmm. And they could have grown their audience simply by having a simple website rather than Facebook. My husband, he got rid of his Facebook, I think, shortly after our kids were born 10 years ago. So, I unfortunately still have one.
This isn't about whether someone's on Facebook. The question is, can you reach them?
Exactly. And how
for
many
a
of them?
Small business, if you have, I don't care, for a big business, you have 1,000, you have 10,000, you have 100,000, you have 1 million Facebook fans, Facebook likes on your page. The average engagement rate for a post is 0.09%.
Say that again.
0.09%. It is not even 1/10 of 1%. So when you post, if you have 1,000 likes, you on average will not reach one person.
Mm-hmm.
What was the freaking point of getting those 1,000 likes? Why did you do all that marketing work to get 1,000 people to like you on Facebook? Right.
Because we're trained as consumers. If you see something, go ahead and like it. Go ahead and like it. What I'm going to be saying in a few minutes. If you like this episode, click like it. We're trained. We've trained each other to like it. Like. The like means nothing in most cases.
Well, so here's the infuriating part, is that Facebook essentially suckered us into marketing for them on their behalf, right?
Yes.
To get consumers both onto their platform and to like our pages, whatever they were, or to engage in some way. And now Facebook can use that data to charge money to other marketers, including our competition, in order to, would you like to reach people who liked the AMA Puget Sound Facebook page? You can pay this amount of money and we will show your ad to that group of people. Yeah. You did the marketing, right? You did the marketing and targeting work. Your competition benefits. Who really benefits is Facebook, right? Essentially, this is all, it's a pure margin business for them. And we're the suckers.
Yeah.
And so I think that you have a tremendous opportunity, if you are willing to look outside of Facebook and Google, a tremendous opportunity to build marketing competency and strength and a flywheel that scales with decreasing friction. But most people won't.
Yeah.
Most people won't. And that's what makes it even more powerful, because you don't have a lot of competition, because people just aren't willing to do that work to figure out where they can reach their audiences outside of those platforms. And I should partially include Amazon as well, if you're in e-commerce.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That was in the back of my head this whole time, is Amazon as well. But it's fascinating. It'll be interesting to see where we go, especially with younger generations starting to reject all of this. And it's, who's holding on to Facebook?
Boy, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about that. I think Instagram use among young generations is still super strong. And my sense is that, unfortunately, for better or worse, Facebook operates a lot like email, right? So 20 years ago, everybody looked at email and they were like, well, email's popular, but among younger generations, it doesn't have adoption. And then 10 years ago, they were like, well, it's still popular, but among younger generations, and now everyone's like, oh, I see. Once you hit 26, you get an email address. Oh, and then you always check your email, and email open rates and usage rates haven't gone down at all. Okay, apparently this is just teenagers don't use email. Great, fine.
Yeah, it's like a rite of passage.
Yeah, so I think Facebook might be the same story, right? Where essentially, fine, you're on TikTok till you're 25 and then you graduate.
Or Logan's Run. Yeah, it's fascinating. And then of course, like I miss MySpace, quite honestly. If we're talking about all of this, I want MySpace. I want my 8 friends. I want my PBR background, like I did in my 20s.
It has been a while. It's been a
Right?
while.
Wow, this went by really quick. So this was a very, I mean, we just jumped right into it. Is there anything else that you feel that you need to address? Like, is there anything else that you want people to know?
Oh, I mean, the list
I
is so
mean,
long.
we could be here for days. I
Yeah,
realize that.
yeah. I mean, and on this particular topic, right? I think that um, the best thing I can do is to give you a few different tools to be able to do this work of like, well, how do I figure out where my audience is?
Mm-hmm.
And surveys and interviews are a good start.
Yes.
Absolutely. But I recognize also that if you ask people, hey, what podcast do you listen to? You're going to get not great answers, right? And so I would check out. So obviously, this is what my company does, right? SparkToro makes a software product that crawls everybody's social media and aggregates together, so you can search and be like, what do electrical engineers in Canada listen to? What do florists in California watch? Blah 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 blah. So you can check that out, and there's a free version. We don't have a lot of competition, but there's a company called Audience with an S instead of a C that makes a good product that is similar-ish to SparkToro. I also really like SimilarWeb. So you can, if you've had a source of traffic outside of Facebook and Google that sent you good traffic, you can plug that into SimilarWeb and scroll down, and they will show you competitors and similar sites that people visited. That can be a wonderful wealth of information, and you can sort of iteratively go through a whole bunch there. There are tools like Clearbit and Full Contact, where you can take your email list and plug it in, and it'll give you the social URLs of your audience, and then you can analyze what they pay attention to. So there are opportunities out there. It's just that
you got to do the work.
It is not as simple as giving Facebook your credit card.
Right, exactly.
It's way more valuable.
Exactly. And just meeting people where they are, that alone, you've done half the work for your customer before they buy. Like, you have to, they will, if we build it, they will come. That, I hate that idea. It doesn't work anymore.
I don't think it ever worked.
Yeah, unless you're Beyonce. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
I would say Beyonce did a tremendous amount of marketing.
True.
Yeah, I mean, and then had labels that did a tremendous amount of marketing.
That is true.
Yeah, had a long career even before she was well known as an individual artist. And
that's true. She didn't just show up day one and here she is.
Yeah,
right, exactly. But she's at this point now that.
Yes, once you have earned a loyal fan base that engages with you, no matter where you are, different story. But
so as a company, you're going to start small, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I also want to plug this. Does this look familiar?
No, I can't tell what that is. Oh, look at that.
I just want to quick plug that for you. So.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. So, Rand, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you think we should know, or just follow you? Your Twitter link is down below. Just follow him.
Sounds good. Julie, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time today. I appreciate it. And thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye.